Good evening. My name is Amanda DeMeo, and on behalf of Darien Library, I want to welcome you to Should Your Forever Home Be Forever? Liz Rolle is the owner of Senior Concierge Services, serving clients throughout Lower Fairfield and Westchester counties, offering services from paper taming to meal prep to decluttering and shopping, and has given her an insider view on people who have chosen to stay in their homes as they age. So she's going to teach us, what should we do when we hit certain ages and when our family is aging? Should they stay? Should they go? What should we do? Before we begin, I'd like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this possible, as well as our collections available to the community. Okay, Liz, take it away.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Thanks for having me back. And thanks I'm just so happy to be here this evening. Let me tell you a little bit about me so that you know where I'm coming from on this topic. I was trained as a rabbi. I spent over 40 years working in synagogues. I met a lot of seniors. I worked with a lot of seniors in a lot of different settings. When I retired, I knew that I wanted to work with older adults, but how? I created Senior Concierge Services to fill a gap that I saw for those who had decided to remain in their homes as they aged, didn't need health care, but needed a hand with the kinds of things that Amanda mentioned: decluttering, meal prep, going shopping, but not going shopping for them, going shopping with them, keeping older adults totally engaged in their own lives. So let's talk a little bit about what I want to try to cover tonight. First, just a thought that AARP and other surveys indicate that the vast majority of older adults would like to remain in their homes if they can. However, a lot of them find that doing so makes them lonely and increases social isolation. And those are issues that have to be solved. Tonight, we're going to cover a number of things. I hope I'm going to answer your questions, but we will have time for Q&A at the end. We're going to talk about safety because in any age, safety is always paramount. We're going to talk about things to consider as one ages, whether at home or elsewhere. I'm going to talk a little bit about the options available and the things that people choose to do as they age. And then we're going to talk about the choice of moving and what to consider in making that choice. One of the biggest concerns as we age is falling. Falling is a huge challenge of aging. I walked into Elaine's home one day and I shuddered. I saw a pile of unread newspapers that she hoped she was going to get to, piled up on a small table at the entranceway to the kitchen. And all I could think of was Elaine just feeling slightly unsteady, putting her hand out on that pile of newspapers, only to have all of them fall to the floor and her right with them. And she wasn't even my client. Furniture can be an issue in a home, a number of different ways. First of all, will the furniture allow for use of a walker, let's say, or a wheelchair? Also, floor coverings just turn out to be a big issue. And an uncovered floor is okay, although it may be a bit slippery. Wall-to-wall carpeting is fine. It's rugs that are really the biggest challenge. Scatter rugs are the worst because they slip and they slide, and seniors sometimes slip and slide right along with them. Even big area rugs that cover the entire room, all you have to do is not lift your foot quite enough and have the toe of your shoe or the toe of your foot catch on the edge of the rug. And all of a sudden, you're on the floor. Stairs. I grew up in a small colonial with a powder room on the first floor and all the bedrooms upstairs. At some point, my mother realized that those stairs were going to be a serious problem for her and for my father as they aged. There was no way to put a master bedroom on the first floor. There was no way to put a full bath on the first floor. And my mother made the decision that they needed to move. Those stairs were insurmountable. And at some point, they would be unmountable. So they made a decision. They moved to a senior community. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Grab bars can be a great solution to fall challenges in a home. Here in this picture, there's an interesting use of grab bars. The banister on the staircase ends, and yet there's one more step. And those grab bars are perfectly placed for this woman to get down that last step. Usually we think of grab bars mostly in bathrooms, anywhere where someone might slip. Bathrooms are particularly treacherous because there are a lot of slippery surfaces and they're very hard. Falling in a bathroom can hit you much harder than falling on a carpet. In the course of a year, almost 3 million older adults find themselves in the emergency room due to a fall. More than half of those are treated and released. Some of them do end up hospitalized. The cost of a fall is very expensive. The patient may not pay it out of pocket. It may be that the insurance will cover everything, but somebody's paying for it. We all know people who have lost their memories or begin to lose some part of their memory, particularly their short-term memory as they age. I'm not talking about my client yesterday who said, there's an orange thing in the refrigerator. I know you're gonna love it. It's really good. Oh, what's it called? What's it called? I can't remember, but it's the orange thing in the refrigerator. Oh, butternut squash. That's actually perfectly normal, as is the occasional, oh, I just can't pull up her name. That's very normal way that the memory works, and one need not be concerned about that. But some kinds of memory loss can actually be dangerous. What happens when someone loses track of the days of the week and they really never know what day it is? Perhaps their medication changes from day to day and they don't know which day it is to take the correct medication. Or they miss an appointment because they have no idea that it was, oh, today. For an older adult who has lost their memory, going outside seems like a wonderful idea. But what happens if they wander and they can't remember how to get home? Cognitive decline sometimes is related to appetite loss. And appetite loss is a true danger because when someone doesn't know what time it is, they don't know that it's mealtime, they may actually just not eat, which of course is not safe for human beings. And I'm sure we've all heard stories about someone who missed a medication dosage or mixed up one medication with another. Those are all concerns that we should have as we make a choice to age at home. We all expect that our physical selves will change over time. People often have balance issues. If you are any age and you haven't started doing balance exercises, start now. It always pays off. Very often people that you see who are walking with a cane or a walker, it's not actually because their walking is a problem. It's actually because their balance is a problem. Walking itself, however, can become a problem for all sorts of different reasons. And the ability to move around, to have mobility, is an important issue to consider in whether or not a home is livable. When someone has a lot of arthritis in their hands, for example, or their shoulders, it can be tempting simply not to take care of that task that requires twisting the cap off something, for example, or changing the light bulb. And tasks that used to be manageable at home just become too challenging and simply don't get done. Some older adults experience a loss of feeling. My sister-in-law lost a lot of the feeling in the bottoms of her feet, which made her feel terribly vulnerable and unbalanced. Her solution was at some point to get a very particular pair of shoes, which allowed her to feel balanced, even though she couldn't feel the bottoms of her feet. When people lose the feeling in their hands, they may not realize that they've gone outside. They don't feel the cold. They could be outside with no jacket on. Indoors, people who have lost feeling in their hands have been known to touch a hot stove. They have no idea that the stove is hot or that it's on or that it just was on. I think probably most people expect to lose some of their stamina as they age, and it is normal. Exercise, walking always helps to maintain stamina as long as possible. Strength is a funny thing. Of course, weight-bearing exercise is strength building and important. I just want to say a word about strength and thinking about it in a different way. My husband walks 30 minutes every single day. If it's not icy underfoot, he's out there. Recently, he felt that his legs, in spite of his walking, 30 minutes every day, his legs were giving out. He had to sit down during his 30-minute walk, sometimes twice. And his concern took him to the doctor, who sent him for physical therapy. The physical therapist indicated that, in fact, he lost the strength in his legs and gave him exercises, which he does faithfully twice a day. And now he walks his 30 minutes, no problem. Because of where we live, staying at home has to raise issues about transportation. In addition to safety and our physical selves, our mental selves, just the basic day-to-day, how do we get around? For most people who want to remain in their homes, in our area, driving is a necessity, and yet many older people at some point have to give up driving. So what are your options? Some people will depend on friends and family. If there are such people around who are willing to drop everything and take you where you need to go, or who will pick up the groceries for you and bring them home. For a few, public transportation may work. Because of the routes of public transportation in our area, there are an awful lot of people for whom that doesn't work. And of course, some people will travel by taxi or Uber or Lyft if they can manage to make the arrangements. So transportation, particularly in suburbia, is a big concern. But concern is your support system. We all have a support system through our lives. Very often it's our families. Our families are nearby and they help us out when they need to. For some of us, it's a neighbor, that neighbor who, took care of a few things when you broke your leg once. Important questions to ask about those people. Are they close by? Could they come when you need them? Are they able? That same neighbor who helped you out when you broke your leg is aging right alongside you. Their ableness, their abilities will decline just as yours will. Are they willing? This is a double-edged sword. Most of us are unwilling to impose on the same people over and over and over again. And sometimes that unwillingness to impose yet again may, again, cause something just not to get done. On the other side is a family member or a friend who may start out feeling very willing to help, but eventually feel put upon and taken advantage of. And are they available? So some of us have our children living around the corner. Not me, but those adult children may be working full time. Even if they're working remotely, they are working full time. So can they come when you need them? In addition, many adult children have become the child care system of choice for their own grandchildren, or they're at home with their own grown child who really needs ongoing help. So are they actually available to take care of your needs? So who will come if? Who will come if you are hospitalized? In my case, I know my children are not coming. The one in Boston will come and say hi and try to be supportive, but won't stay long. The one in Berlin and his wife, they're not coming. Distance is, of course, one of the concerns, and these other issues come into play as well. So in addition to transportation and a support system, we also need a social life. Now, over years, we've probably created a social life in one of any number of ways. For some of us, it's the parents of our children's friends became our friends. For others who have been involved in a church, a synagogue, any religious institution, that community may be the focus of their social life. For those who've been members of the Elks Club, the Knights of Columbus, Rotary Club, whatever, that may be the focus of your social life. And your social circle may pull from any number of sources originally, but they've become your circle. For a lot of us, that circle is mostly in our own age range. If you're fortunate and these sources of social life happen to range over a number of generations, there may well, in fact, be younger people who would pick up an older person to go to an event or to a meeting or to dinner. For some people, long distance contacts is really sufficient. My aunt lives in a freestanding house on her own. She has a daily bridge game. If she didn't show up or she didn't answer the phone, it would be noticed. But beyond that, her contacts are long distance. Her children and grandchildren are all over the country, the same with her nieces and nephews. But for her, this is a perfectly happy way to live. She's willing to speak to people on the phone every once in a while, and she's happy. My mother would have been miserable. So in considering moving or not moving, the where and maybe the when, it's important to remember that there are emotional issues in making this decision, both for the older adult and for the family members. For the older adult, there's a fear of the unknown. Listen, moving is one of the most stressful things that happens in anyone's life. On that stress scale, where marriage and divorce and moving is right up there. So fear of the unknown is very reasonable for anyone who's facing a move. In addition, you have an older adult who may have lived in a home for a long time and feels very attached to that place. For family members, they may have reached their limit. They just can't give anymore. So the emotional issues around this question are deep and strongly felt. There are advantages to staying home. If these issues, the transportation and the support system and the health care and everything are easily resolved, then staying home could be a good option. There's the familiarity with the home. I know where those pieces of furniture are. I also know where the grocery store is. And I know how my supermarket is laid out, as opposed to that other supermarket that I don't particularly like. And it is, for many people, it is the all over best solution. Other people move in with family. So this is a very varied happening. At the beginning of COVID, my mother, living in an apartment alone, in independent living in a senior community, we couldn't see her. But none of us have a home that would accommodate her. We have a nanny suite or an in-law suite or whatever you want to call it, but it has stairs. That was why she moved to begin with. So moving in with family may work. The questions that I've raised already still have to be solved. Is that place in someone else's home, the daughter, the niece, whatever, is it safe? The same safety issues as there were in the original home. And transportation. I spoke to a woman who called about getting help for her mother. She had moved her mother into her home. Everything was fine, except that she was working full-time and her two teenagers were in school all day and her mother had nothing to do. So what did it gain her? So that's the question of social isolation. I just spoke to someone yesterday who told me that she moved her father across state lines to live with them, except then he didn't know anybody. So his solution, and he found the solution himself, his solution was that he moved into a senior community nearby. He lived there 4 days a week, where there were people to go to dinner with, people for activities. And then he lived with his daughter 3 days a week. Okay? And that question of familiarity, whether it's familiarity with the living space itself or with the neighborhood. Many people move into senior communities. There are some real advantages. Senior communities are designed with universal design in mind. Universal design in interior design or in architectural design is the idea that everyone should have access to anything that's available. So for example, the doors are made wide enough to allow for a wheelchair, or the door handles are manageable for someone who has arthritis. Those are the kinds of things that universal design does. This illustration shows this lovely leaf from the island with rounded corners. Another important part of universal design. Also in senior communities, careful thought is given to how one enters a shower and whether it's safe, whether one has to reach over a bathtub or even a lip, or whether it's smooth from the floor of the bathroom into the shower. Of course, everybody likes the no maintenance side of living in a community where something goes wrong, you just pick up the phone. In senior communities, help is available. That help takes many different shapes and very different kinds of time commitments. So it could be as simple as making sure that the medication gets taken at the right time of day, and someone will actually stand and wait for the medication to be taken so that they're certain that it happened. It can extend to much more help than that, being available for help with bathing, help with dressing. And of course, there's community. There's built-in community with activities already planned, with communal meals, which can solve the whole issue of social isolation. So I didn't mention in talking about social isolation that very often people's friends who have been their social contacts move away. They move to live closer to an adult child, or they move to a warmer climate. And that's not unusual here. So slowly, all of those social contacts begin to disappear. And this built-in community is a way to solve for that in some ways. If one thinks about moving, then you have to ask the important questions of the actual move itself. Is it respectful of the elders' wishes? I saw a woman yesterday at a senior community where I have a client, and I smiled, remembering that she had told me, this was a woman that I know tangentially from the community. She had moved into the senior community quite happily. Her husband was living in their house, and apparently that worked for them. More often, one spouse has memory challenges, and the other partner finds that they can no longer manage the spouse. So one person moves into a memory care facility while another may stay at home. Who's going to actually do the work of the move? Who's going to help with the decluttering, with the packing, with the unpacking? It's important to ask if this is the last move. My sister-in-law moved from a lovely colonial where she raised 3 children to a beautiful condo with a master bedroom, master bath on the main floor. And it was quite lovely. But as she required more help, she couldn't stay there, and she had to make another move into a senior community. So is this the last move, or will there be another move? And the simple stress of moving. Are they going to survive? Are you going to survive? There came a moment when my grandmother had to move. She had to move from her apartment. There just was not any other choice. My aunt and my mother agreed that she would move to a nursing home, but they also knew that the stress would not be manageable. So in fact, they did move her to a nursing home, and 6 months later, she had died. the stress can be overwhelming. So 3 things that I hope you'll carry away with you from this presentation. One is that no one size fits all. There are a lot of options and there's no right answer. That there has to be respect for the needs of both the older adult and the family members. And finally, there are a lot of issues that need to be weighed: safety, cognitive and physical decline, the social and emotional issues that I touched on. All of these are important in deciding whether your forever home can really be forever. I would encourage you, if you are 50, 60, or 70, or 80, to think about all of these things. The sooner you think about them, the sooner you can make some decisions about what you do or don't want for the end of your life. I'm going to take some questions and answers, I hope. No, I'm going to give the answers. I'm going to take the questions. But I do want to put up my contact information just for a moment. Call me anytime. I answer people's questions all the time. I direct people to resources. Call me if you have a question. So, Amanda, I think we're ready for questions.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for all of that information. That was wonderful. And when it comes to moving, I think moving is one of the most stressful things in the world. So you want to make sure you make the right decision for yourself. Do you have any advice for those who are, looking ahead, like what they could do right now to make their home, like obviously you talked about furniture and this and that, but what do you think are the main things that you should be thinking about?
So
while you're,
depending on your
able-bodied?
age, right. So it depends a lot on your age. If you are a relatively young person and don't expect these things to be issues anytime soon, what I would say to you is, when you do renovations in your home, keep these issues in mind. If you think you're going to want to remain in your home, then when you do the kitchen, when you do the bathroom, keep these things in mind and make sure that you make them livable for you now and you 30 or 50 years from now. If you are older, then I think the question is, do you prepare in advance or do you just see what you need when it happens? I don't, again,
alert from no backups for 44 days.
Yes, I don't think that was my computer. I apologize. I knew that was going to happen. If it's possible that something will happen to one partner or a widow or widower, and they will need to make changes to the home. But it's impossible to predict which changes are going to be necessary. So I think for some people, it makes sense to start to make changes to their homes. Other people just will wait until something happens and they'll respond at the time.
Thank you. I know my husband works in EMS, and he's always talking about having to bring people down the flights of stairs. So I'm more mindful of that now. And I know that the home I'm in for now is hopefully my forever home, and there's space on the main floor for a bedroom. So if, I can stay here for as long as I can, hopefully.
Great. So I think, those are the kinds of things that we don't like to think about. Mm-hmm. So how are the EMTs going to get you out of your house if it comes to that? And it comes to that more often than we think, not necessarily because the damage or the issue it turns out to be really serious. Even so, sometimes we end up being removed by EMTs for whatever reason. When we moved into my current house, we looked at homes and there wasn't a lot of choice. There weren't a lot of choices on the market. And my husband insisted that the master bedroom had to be on the main floor, which meant we were going to buy a ranch, whether I liked it or not, and I didn't like it. I have to say, 20 years later, I really love the house, and I've gotten used to it. And I am the one who does the stairs down to the finished basement because that's where my office is. So he got his wish.
I was thinking about meals. So, if I'm looking to the future and I feel like I'm coming to a point where I don't think I can make enough nutritional meals for myself for the week, what would you suggest? I was thinking like if I had close friends to kind of take turns cooking,
Right.
and do like a potluck.
Right. And yet, how long would you be willing to depend on those people?
Yeah.
Right. It's a very, and it depends on who they are. Right. People have different kinds of friends, different kinds of family members. For people who have very limited income, Meals on Wheels can sometimes be a solution. For those of us who are terribly sophisticated and don't mind doing the meal prep, but can't, for example, can't stand up for lengthy periods in the kitchen. There are, all of those, the Blue Apron and I forget the other fresh something that I don't remember the name of, that where you can get meals delivered, all of the ingredients, you just put it together and it takes 20 minutes or it takes 30 minutes. And if you can stand that long, you don't have to do all the chopping. But it's an expensive option. I just visited last weekend with friends who, since the last time I saw their place, had redone the kitchen. They actually put in a counter where they could cook and particularly bake while sitting down.
It sounds lovely.
Right. It was lovely.
I get tired.
Right. I have to say that that's an issue for me. I ordinarily spend about an hour prepping for dinner, and I can stand up for that period of time. But on those occasions when I am hostess for a big to-do, it's a lot of standing for me.
Now, Liz, you may have mentioned this before, but I was thinking about money management. Do you help people get organized with like paying their bills or filling out like confusing healthcare forms?
So Senior Concierge Services does all kinds of things like that. In fact, my very first client was the daughter of a declining mother. And she handed me, at our first meeting, she handed me a Rubbermaid bin full of unsorted mail. She said, "This is about 6 months worth of mail. It needs to be dealt with." We do things like that. We don't do any kind of money management, and we don't handle people's finances, but we do help them sort papers, distinguish between the credit card offer and the credit card bill. We have helped people write their checks and then taken them in so that they actually get into the mail. We've also had people prepare the bills and leave them for, let's say, an adult child who will come over the weekend and pay the bills, but it takes so much less time once everything's in place and in order. So it was surprising to me at the beginning for how many people that really is an issue. The whole issue of paper taming. I shouldn't have been surprised. My brother handled my parents' finances as they became less and less able. And I would hear from him all the time, I tell mom to keep all the bills and she throws them out. And, it was an ongoing thing between the two of them. He couldn't get her to keep the bills, and she, for whatever reason, just seemed to think they could go in the trash.
I wish that was the case. And then, they're just magically paid for.
No, it's very funny because my mother was financially very responsible, but somehow she just couldn't get it in her head that she needed to keep the bills for him to see.
And someone just left a comment. Hello, Liz. Thank you for this detailed and helpful information. You brought up some good points that I hadn't considered. We bought a condo recently with a master bedroom on the main floor, but our bedroom is currently on the upper level, so we can get the exercise by using the steps.
Right. I have to say there is something to that. As I said, my office is in our finished basement. I'm the one who goes up and down the stairs, often like this. I come upstairs and I think I'm going to get a cup of coffee. And I find myself downstairs having picked up a piece of paper that I didn't need for what I was working on, but no cup of coffee in here. Going back up the stairs. So I do understand that exercise thing on the stairs. But at a certain point, it just isn't tenable anymore.
What would you say would be like the signs, like the early signs saying, okay, maybe we should move our bedroom downstairs?
The stairs themselves is one of them. You may not be ready to move downstairs, but you may want to ready downstairs for that possible move. So making sure that room maybe is already furnished, making sure that the bathroom is everything that you would want when it's the only one you have access to. Those are all important things, even if you don't actually move there. I think that people usually know the moment when going up and down the stairs is no longer a choice. Sometimes it can be because of a fall or a broken bone, where it may not even be permanent. It may just be that temporarily you need to use that bedroom on the main floor. Very often, though, I think that people find once they've had an event that causes them to use that bedroom on the main floor, they don't move back upstairs so quickly.
Let's see here, Liz. What do you feel like is one of the most popular, calls you get, or one of the most popular services that you provide?
We do an enormous amount of paperwork. It's not always the only thing we do. Mm-hmm. Very often.
It is very overwhelming. So I would feel comfortable asking for help in that category.
Right. And there are different issues that come up with paper. At a certain point in life, many people really can't tell what the first class mail is and what isn't, or can't convince themselves that they don't need to read all the flyers anymore, that they're not going to be making a purchase from Kohl's or Bed Bath & Beyond or wherever. But very often we do paperwork alongside other responsibilities. So we may actually be asked to come in and do some decluttering. It's one of the favorites is turning over the winter clothes to spring and the summer clothes to fall.
I like that.
Sometimes people can't lift the containers that they've put the other season's clothes in. Sometimes those containers have been put up too high, and the stepladder doesn't seem to be a safe choice anymore. And we do all kinds of things like that. But often, once we start working on decluttering with someone, it extends to their paperwork as well. So it's, someone called me recently and said, would I pick up her mother and go to the doctor? And the fact is that we do take our clients to the doctor, but not as a service unto itself. It's, we have a client, by chance they need to go to the doctor, we take them. So it's not that we're a ride service, because we're not. But people do need rides sometimes. For us, that's an additional service. It's not a main service.
Okay. When I had a gentleman a while back talk about downsizing, and he said that if you're going to downsize, save the paperwork for last, because it's so time consuming. You can get kind of stuck in it and
Right.
start reminiscing, so you kind of lose track of time to do other things.
Yep. Right. I just did a move. I don't do moves. Just want to put that out there. I don't do moves. But I just did a move, in part because it was a family friend, in part because the owner of the home who had died had been my client. So I simply sort of came along for the ride. But there were innumerable, shall we say, cartons of photos that had been collected over probably 50 years. And we did some work on those photos, but mostly, unfortunately, they ended up in storage because it's very time consuming. The best part is when my client said, I don't know who those people are. I don't know who those people are. I don't know who those But more often it was, yeah, I do know those people. So.
Well, no one has given any more questions, so I think you covered all our bases. Do you have any, words of wisdom to leave us with?
Simply that there are a lot of different concerns, and that the wishes of both the older adult and other family members need to be balanced when you're making these decisions. They're not easy. Also, actually, I will say one other thing. Anything you're doing in terms of an older adult, anything you're doing, there is a resource for. There is help available. You don't know it because you only age once, or you may have two parents and two in-laws, but there's just a limit to how many times you do this. But there are people who do whatever you're working on, who do it professionally and who can help, sometimes at no cost to you. So it's always worth asking, this project that I'm struggling with, who can help me? Not that you will know the answer, but find someone who can help you find the right resource. There is someone to figure out which senior community. There is someone to figure out what kind of home aid will be useful. There's someone to help figure out Medicaid. There's someone to fight with your insurance company. I mean, there's somebody who does everything that you're struggling with. There's someone out there who does it.
Thank you for saying that, because I feel like there's so many resources out there that we're just unaware of. and it kind of sheds some light to what is out there. Where would
and you just have to find one of them, because we all know each other, and we'll direct you to the right person who does the thing that you're having trouble with now.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah,
Sure, have like a website, a separate website with all these resources on it. I'm sure AARP is a good resource as well.
I think that, like so many things in life, we don't consider the possibility that there's someone who does this, someone who knows more about it than I do. And we just don't look for the help. So
yeah, you're absolutely
or
right.
we don't know how to look for the help, which is really, in this case, really easy to understand.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Amanda, thank you. I really enjoyed being here, and hope to be back again.
Of course. Thank you everyone for attending tonight's programming. I want to thank everyone for, sharing your questions. And I hope that you learn from Liz's expertise. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Bye, everyone.